Hi there! Welcome to Pallet University and the continuation of our PaleoPokes series, where we take a look at the fossil Pokemon from the perspective of a real paleontologist. If you like this kind of content and you're one of the roughly 50% of my viewers who are not subscribed, make sure to hit that button down below, as well as leave a comment to help me outsmart the YouTube algorithm. Today we're going to be talking about the Gen 1 fossils Omanyte, Omastar, Kabuto, Kabutops, and Aerodactyl. More specifically, what types I think they were when they were alive before they were fossilized. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, then you clearly haven't seen this video where I talk about which types can and can't be replaced with a rock type during fossilization. If you have not seen that video, please go watch it. You will ask a lot of questions in this if you haven't seen it that will be answered by watching this, specifically like why I picked type A over type B. Please go watch it. You'll have so many fewer questions. And with that, let's just jump into it. Firstly, we have Omanyte. After going through Omanyte's Pokedex entries, I found pretty much nothing. Pretty much all of Omanyte's Pokedex entries just mention how it swam in ancient seas, although some entries did say that it swam cleverly or adeptly using its 10 tentacles. So after finding nothing in the Pokedex, I decided to look at Omanyte's moveset, which usually is full of moves that are the same type as the Pokemon. And obviously I found a lot of water-type moves and some rock-type moves, but I was looking mostly for like a third type that had a lot of moves, but it wasn't really helpful. The only other types with a significant number of moves were Normal, which I don't really think makes sense, and Ice, which I also don't really think makes sense. Ice makes a little more sense, but all of the Ice-type moves that Omanyte learns were either through egg moves or TMs, so it's not like it learned any of them naturally. Also, more importantly, it can't be the Ice type based on the rules that we've set in that video that I told you to go watch earlier. Seriously though, if you have not seen it or don't remember, please go watch it, because I'm sure, especially when we get to some of the later Pokemon in this video, people are going to be, why isn't Aerodactyl dragon type? Spoilers, it's not. Because that makes so much sense, because it can't be based on the rules that we've set in this video. Please go watch it so I don't have to reply to comments saying I answered it in this video. Please just go watch the video. In science, we would call this doing background research, or, typically in science things are published in papers, so we would call it doing a literature review. So think of that not as me just telling you to go watch another one of my videos. It's mostly me asking you to look at this so that we're all on the same page about some of the conclusions that I make. Anyway, because of just a lack of data, I'm kind of inclined to think that Omanyte was just a pure water type, which is kind of unsatisfactory, but that's kind of science sometimes. Alright, moving on to Omastar. So Omastar's moveset was just as helpful as Omanyte's. So I didn't get any information from Omastar's moveset, because obviously it learns almost exactly the same moves that Omanyte does. However, Omastar's Pokedex was much more helpful than Omanyte's. All of Omastar's Pokedex entries kind of make three things pretty clear. Number one, in that its tentacles are very adapted. They're basically like hands and feet. Number two, its bite was really strong, and also weirdly that Shelter existed when Omanyte was alive. That might be a separate theory in and of itself. And three, that Omanyte went extinct because its shell grew too big and it became too slow. Evolutionarily speaking, that's probably not what happened. It's much more likely that the prey, developed to be faster, and Omanyte did not evolve quickly enough to be able to catch up to them. That happened a lot in, not so much when Ammonites, the animal that Omanyte and Omastar are based off of. That happened a lot with some of the early fishes, where a lot of them had a lot of really heavy armor, because that was right around the time when things were first developing jaws. So they had all this armor to keep from being crushed. But eventually some of them lost their armor and became very fast, so some of the big armored fish, like Dunkleosteus, which is what Dracovish's and Arctovish's head is based off of, that's pretty much why those big armored fishes went extinct. But that's just me nitpicking, that's not actually important. So, anyway, the only other typing that I could think made sense for Omastar is rock. Omanyte could swim just fine, which, justifies it being a water type, but when it evolves into Omastar, its shell gets too thick and sturdy and heavy for it to swim around because it gains the rock type. And you know, that's kind of anticlimactic for the first fossils in this part of the series, but many times in paleontology and science in general, the data just aren't there to make big sweeping conclusions or to change well-established ideas. Sometimes the data just don't support conclusions like that, and I guess this is just one of those times. Although moving on to Kabuto and Kabutops, they actually have some options. There's the obvious bug type, because clearly they look like it. However, that breaks our rules. They cannot be the bug type. Well, what does the Pokédex say about them? Mostly that Kabuto lived on the seafloor or beaches and can rarely be found alive today in the wild, which is neat. I didn't actually know that before doing the research for this video. Also that Kabutops swims real fast. However, Kabutops does have some interesting things in its Pokédex as well. 4 of its 12 unique Pokédex entries mention that it was in the process of evolving from being purely in the water to being on land. This gave me the idea that these two might be water-ground types. Kabuto lives on the seafloor, which is the ground of the sea, as well as on beaches. Beaches and the near-shore seabed are made almost entirely of sand, which is pretty well established throughout the Pokemon franchise to be associated with the ground type. Also, the fact that Kabutops was moving from water to land, or ground, somewhat supports that idea as well. In order to sort of match Omanyte and Omastar, because, you know, they're sort of counterparts in basically every way that Pokemon does counterparts, I could see Kabuto being pure water, and then gaining the second typing when it evolves. So, now we're actually on to the one that I'm least happy about, and that's Aerodactyl. Aerodactyl has the most Pokédex entries of any fossil Pokemon, so that gave me a lot of material to work with. It's been in just as many Pokédexes as the other Generation 1 fossils. However, Aerodactyl is the only one of them that has a Mega form, and in Sun, Moon, Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon, and Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, the Mega form gets its own Pokédex entry. And it's actually these 5 additional Pokédex entries that specifically are the ones that make me unhappy. And that's because they sort of contradict each other. On one hand, 3 of its 5 Pokédex entries for the Mega form mention that this Mega form is Aerodactyl's true appearance. Specifically, in Ultra Moon, its Pokédex entry says, Mega Evolution awakened dormant genes, bringing back the sharp rocks that once covered Aerodactyl's body. That's kind of hard to dispute if you're taking the Pokédex literally, which I don't often I try to not do that, because a lot of times the Pokédex just says some really crazy things. But when you're doing this kind of research and this kind of topic, it's kind of hard not to, because we just don't have other data. On the other hand, the 2 that don't mention that the Mega form is representative of what Aerodactyl looked like when it was alive mention that Mega Evolution causes Aerodactyl a lot of pain. Its Ultra Sun Pokédex entry even says that Mega Evolution is a burden on Aerodactyl's body. If the Mega form was really its true form, then why would being in that form cause it to experience so much pain? I don't really like it, but I feel like this is probably the most likely scenario for Aerodactyl, and that it truly was a rock flying type. There's an additional answer that also has some support to it, which is that Aerodactyl was a dark flying type when it was alive. It gets plenty of dark type moves, and not just the ones that you would think, like Bite and Crunch. It gets like Taunt, Torment, Thief, just some relatively obscure dark type moves that I don't think that many other dark type or non-dark type Pokemon get in combination with each other. More importantly though, the non-Mega Pokédex entries very often call Aerodactyl ferocious, vicious, savage, and these kinds of words are typically saved for dark type Pokemon. For example, Carvanha itself is listed as the savage Pokemon. Personally, I like the dark type explanation better, because it, there's evidence for it also in sort of the anime, in that Aerodactyl's just general demeanor is just angry. And being a dark type would kind of explain that, because, most people know in Japanese that it's not listed as the dark type, it's actually called the evil type. However, as a scientist, you can't just ignore data that you don't like, so rock flying it is. Well, needless to say, I'm not incredibly enthusiastic about the results of this video, but sometimes science really does be that way. In fact, my first ever independent research when I was in college was a lot like this. I spent a lot of time and several 10+ hour Saturdays in this like dank, dark basement lab where I was running some experiments on these old clam fossils from around 212-ish million years ago. And what were the results of all that hard work? A big fat nothing. No new findings, no interesting conclusion, none of it. And it taught me a really valuable lesson in that sometimes science sucks. You know, sometimes you just get nothing. But those results are just as important as some of the big sweeping conclusions that sometimes make headlines, because you're ruling out future possibilities and you're helping guide future research toward the correct answer that you were looking for. With that, I think I've kept you long enough. Thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What type do you think all of these Generation 1 fossils were when they were alive the first time? You can also tweet your ideas at me at Pallet_U, and also make sure to follow to keep up on all things Pokemon science. And as always, there's a time and place for everything.